Day 13. So, we've just talked about the sweet side of Christmas, but now Legay is going to tell us more about the savory side.
Fat and protein.
Making me hungry already. Let's go.
Okay, we'll do this the same way we did the last one. This is a long one. So we'll start with the international dishes again. A lot of countries around the world have some sort of buffet for Christmas, and a lot of countries have specific dishes for this buffet. So
Hmm.
you have countries that have up to 12 courses in their buffet, and it is a specific order of Christmas dishes. Then you have Christmas soups and stews. That makes sense because that is something that is more popular during the cold season. You
Hmm.
have seasonal salads, and it's usually not so much green salads, but a lot of these salads have something like beetroot in them, for example, or mayonnaise. And then you have the protein I've been talking about, and often in combination with the fat. So for Christmas, you have meat. Even if you can't afford meat around the year, then for Christmas, you will try to get some meat for the family. That can be beef, but the absolute star of Christmas meats is pork. So it's some kind of pork dish. It's a ham, or it's sometimes even a suckling pig. We'll talk about that. Some people eat lamb or mutton. Some eat meatballs, which can be made of different animals. And then you have the big group of Christmas birds, which start with chickens, but sometimes people want something a bit more special because a chicken is rather ordinary. So around Christmas, people eat duck, goose, and turkey as something special that they don't get every day. And then there is even Christmas fish and seafood. So carp, for example, is a Christmas fish, and it can be cooked in different ways. There is the blue carp, for example, and this is not a naturally blue fish. It's just a carp that is cooked in vinegar water, and the vinegar in the water turns the skin of the fish blue. So, Latin America and Spain again, we've heard that's one of the juggernauts of Christmas items. They have codfish. Codfish is very popular in the Iberian Peninsula. You've probably seen that. You were in Spain, Nate, right? So they have these codfish croquettes, I think they call them.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, that is something that they really like to eat, and that is also a Latin American thing. And then salmon, but salmon is more a northern thing. Um, and then in addition to that, you have stews made of meat and fish, and sometimes even sausage stews. The most common side dishes are rice dishes and potato dishes, but there are also parsnips that are pretty popular. And of course, you need gravy to wash it all down. And a very special dish that I wouldn't have expected to find here are tamales. But a lot of Latin American countries eat Christmas tamales.
Oh.
And we're closing with cheese. Interestingly, there is a big tradition around cheese for Christmas time. And that makes sense too, because you would typically start making the cheese in summer when the milk has the best aroma. Because it's fresh. The animals eat fresh grass, so the milk has this very fresh aroma, and you use this to make cheese. But of course, the cheese has to rest before it's done. So in Switzerland, for example, they put it in caves or in basements, and they let it sit for a while. Um, and it's usually ready around Christmas time. That is, if you don't want to store it any longer. There are also cases where cheese can be stored for longer because it needs to rest longer. But around Christmas time, that would be when you can get the cheese out of the basement, for example. So
Huh.
those are international dishes, and we will go into details. Anything to say about the international side?
A lot of it sounds exactly like what I would expect out of Christmas, 100%.
Except for the tamales.
Yeah, that one caught me by surprise, but it's always good to learn other cultures. So, surprised you didn't
Yeah.
mention cranberry sauce, though.
Oh, that's coming, but that is not international.
Oh, okay.
We'll see. So of course, it's not just in one country. You have it in the UK and in the United States.
Hmm.
But it's more individual, and there are not so many people who are using cranberry sauce for Christmas.
Right, gotcha.
Okay, we can start with something that you know a lot about, um, and that is in the individual culture, the buffets. And we're talking about buffets in the Anglosphere. So, what does an American Christmas table look like, and what does an English Christmas table look like?
Um, so typical American one. Typically, you'd have at least one meat, potentially two. Usually, one of them is a bird, most likely turkey, very popular, or chicken if people don't like turkey. It's quite rare to find duck or goose over in the US, I gotta be honest. It does happen, but not as common as turkey or chicken. Let's see, when it comes to the other meat, they do like doing a ham. Some kind of a pork thing is usually ham. And you might find beef, but you don't tend to find much else besides that. They don't tend to venture into more exotic animal meat, which is interesting. You think they would, but they really don't. Potatoes, they tend to like to do mashed potatoes the most. I gotta say, it's quite interesting, because as a UK person, I much prefer roast potatoes myself because that just fits with the roast. But whatever. They typically go for stuffing. That's pretty common. Usually like a sage and onion kind of thing. Sometimes maybe pork. Sometimes not, depending on vegetarian stuff. Gravy. Naturally, they got gravy. If you're lucky, they'll get a country style gravy, which can be quite nice and thick, but it really depends. They don't always make their own. They tend to get like the store bought kind of stuff. Cranberry sauce when it comes to like vegetables. Oh, they also like to do sweet potato. That tends to be a thing. Yams. It's kind of the sweeter side of stuff. Sometimes topped with like marshmallows. Quite interesting. Quite interesting. Not a very common thing to see, but quite interesting. Vegetables. It would be like they tend to do green beans. You might get peas, but not much. That's definitely a more UK thing. Carrots, parsnips for sure, especially like honeyed parsnips, really nice. I'd say those are probably some of the most common American ones for sure. And then when it comes to the UK side, we tend to, I mean, you can get the variety of meats. There's no doubt. Whether it be, it's usually turkey ham, beef joint, lamb. Those are all really common, really popular. Stuffing naturally. Yorkshire puddings. We just do Yorkshire puddings with any kind of a roast type situation. So that's always a savory pudding, really nice. Gravy naturally. Whenever we do it, you want to use the juices of the meat just so you can make a really nice luscious gravy. You tend to chuck in some extra bits as well to really make it like a proper home style gravy. Tends to have a lot of extra flavor, really good. Cranberry sauce, roast potatoes. Sometimes you get mashed, but not really as often. It's definitely roast potatoes is the way to go for the UK. Vegetables, carrots, peas, usually like garden peas, marifat, things like that. If you're lucky, petit pois, but it's definitely more of a French thing. Um, and see, I think it's a carrots, honey parsnips as well. Like it over there, Brussels sprouts. Yeah, it's pretty Christmas right there. At least savory wise.
Great. Have you tried all of this?
I have, I have. I do like Christmas food. It's really tasty.
So, what
Not
would be
always a
your
buffet style though.
what would be your favorite, and what is your least favorite?
Well, least favorite off the bat, Brussels sprouts. Just not the flavor for me. You know, it's
Bit
it's
bitter.
just a yeah. It just doesn't quite hit the palate quite right. Like the texture is fine, but the flavor just doesn't hit well. Favorite, I'd have to say. I mean, I always like a good stuffing. Can't help it. Roast potatoes are good. Most of the other veg is fine. Nothing wrong with that. But if it's a meat, I'd have to say. Oof. I mean, I do like turkey, but I think I gotta go with like a nice roast beef, or if you're lucky, some lamb. Oof, that's the way. Mm-mm.
Yes. Okay. And we've heard of trimmings.
Trimmings.
So, of course, not the Vita Canis trimmings. Let me show one of these.
Yeah. God, no.
Um, but trimmings are cuts from the Christmas roasts, if I'm informed correctly.
That's correct. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So trimmings are not the same as stuffing.
No.
Because I've seen some of that online when I was researching. I thought, no, wait, that is not the same. Okay. I'll show you food from other countries now, and I'll show you the buffets first.
Awesome.
Kuchos. And that is a Baltic buffet.
Mm.
And that can be cold and meatless. So in some countries, you have Christmas feasting. You get something to eat, and you get something special to eat that you don't get every day during the year. But it's not like it's super rich. So you can see there is some meat, there are some potatoes and so on, many different dishes, and it looks like a Christmas table, but it is not as rich as it could be, and that is a decision. So it's not because they can't afford it, it's a decision people make. Baltic states, to make that clear, is Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia. And these countries are bordering Poland, Belarus, Russia, and Finland. So that is the corner where they are, and it's kind of northeast Europe. Okay, next is Finland, and they call this joulupoita. So you can see there is a big roast, and it already looks a bit more like the Christmas table that we're used to. There are different types of salads. So the pink one is a pink herring salad, for example. That is a herring salad with a cream sauce and beetroot color. So that's why it's shockingly pink. Um, and as you can see, it's also a lot of dishes, and it's a lot of salads. There is also some cold stuff among that. It's not always a warm buffet, and joulupoita means the Christmas table. And we'll see the word Yule in Finland a lot because Father Christmas or Saint Nicholas or Santa Claus, that is called joulupuki in Finnish. So they've taken this word from their Scandinavian neighbors. Then in Italy, we're very, very specific. The Italians have a 7 fish feast. And it's not just fish, it's fish and seafood. So part of it is clams and octopus, all kinds of sea creatures. So there is fish on the table, but not just fish. And that is a very common Italian Christmas table with 7 fish courses.
Hmm.
Then Poland absolutely takes the cake. Poland is the one with the 12-course menu. And the plates with the red inside, that is borscht.
Ah.
That is a soup, and it's a stew actually. So it is liquid, but it has so much stuff in it usually that it's more like a stew, and it has beef and pork in it. It has potatoes and white cabbage. Then it has carrot slices. There's a whole lot of stuff that goes into a borscht, and it's different in different Slavic countries. So Polish is not the same as Russian, for example. It's a very common dish, and it's very, very tasty. I've tried Russian borscht a lot, and it's super tasty.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, so as you can see, that is a really full table. That is the biggest I've seen. So with 12 items, You have this symbolism for the 12 apostles and for the 12 months of the year and so on. So there is a reason why it's 12. Then Sweden only has 3 courses. And this is called julbord. And julbord means Christmas table.
Oh.
As you can see, also a lot of that pink color, which is beetroot color. So they color dishes intentionally with beetroot.
Cool.
Then we have Latin America. And in Brazil, they have Ceia de Natal. Ceia de Natal also means Christmas table. And that looks very much like a lot of pies or a lot of cakes on the table, you know.
Yeah.
You do have a roast, but you have a lot of pie-like structures. And but we'll look into these dishes. We'll look into specific dishes that are part of these Christmas tables. But I wanted to show you the full buffet so you could see what it looks like when it's all together on the table. Then Africa has Ethiopia, and Ethiopia is a very old Christian country. So Ethiopia in Africa has the oldest Christian tradition and also the oldest Jewish tradition. And Ethiopian food is similar to Indian food in some regards because of the Silk Road on water. So it's not just over land, but it's also a trade that is a sea trade. And there is a connection between India and the African East Coast, for example. What's special about this is you see that there are different dishes, but they're not on a plate. When you look at the thing, you see these pores.
Yeah.
So that is not a plate, that is actually more like a flat bread or a huge pancake, and it has this grayish color. And this huge pancake for the Ghana celebration is used as a plate, and it's also used as a spoon. So you would take this bread or this pancake to pick up some of the foods and to eat them. And then in Asia, we have Royal Korean cuisine, and I really don't have a picture for that. But it's basically popular dishes in Korea that are associated with the royal cuisine. So they don't really have their own Christmas dishes. They just pick up stuff that they like and that they think is expensive and high status for this important celebration. So it's not that much linked to Christmas, actually. One thing that people do in the global south during Christmas time is that they're having a barbecue outside because December isn't cold in South Africa or Australia or New Zealand. Oh, yeah, we have barbecue. So, this is the Australian side.
Looks fun.
Absolutely. And this is the South African side. And you can tell the South African side is just obsessed with meat and sausages. And the Australians, they have a little bit more variety. They have meat, but they also have fish and seafood. So, from what I've seen, the Australian, also the New Zealand Christmas table is a barbecue that contains meat and fish and seafood. Do you want to tell us what pigs in blankets are?
Sure. So pigs in blankets are essentially typically small sausages, like a cocktail sausage, essentially, which is it has this lovely little savory pastry wrapped around it, so it looks like it's a little tiny piggy in a blanket, or in some cases bacon. That's true. That's definitely the more popular one these days.
So when it's wrapped in a piece of dough or pastry, that is also a thing that exists in Germany, and they call that sausages in a nightshirt.
Sausages and nightshirt. That's great.
So it's not too far off from the pigs in blankets. And what I've seen is that the blankets are bacon, but I mean, I understand if it's some sort of pastry.
Yeah, I'd definitely say it's more popular as the bacon these days.
Yeah. Yes, I mean, cardiologists probably have a different opinion. They will
Oh,
tell
for
you.
sure.
Okay, then let's take a tour through Europe. So this is a specifically British dish. That's why I wanted to show it. And we'll dive into Europe. So what is very, very popular in Central Europe is red cabbage and knödel. So knödel is something that you've probably not heard before, but it's dumplings. It's potato dumplings.
Ooh, that sounds good.
This red cabbage and knödel is, of course, part of the German Christmas dish. That's what it looks like. So you have a piece of goose, and then you have the red cabbage that is usually quite elaborate. So it's made with red cabbage and sliced apples. And then you put in some cinnamon and cloves, but usually cinnamon sticks, and you take out the spices when it's done, so you don't have to eat the cinnamon sticks.
Yeah.
And that gives it a really exotic taste, like the apple with the cloves and the cinnamon sticks, adding to that cabbage. So it's not just cabbage; it's like magical cabbage.
Magical cabbage. Yeah, we've had red cabbage and apple in England a fair few times. I
So
don't think
the
it's been as elaborate as that, but yeah.
Maybe try to add some spices next time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that sounds good. I'll try that.
So the knödel are the pieces on the left, the yellow balls with sauce on them, and I've heard that knödel are the only dish that Anthony Bourdain did not like. Maybe you know that he had a show where he traveled the world and he tried dishes everywhere, and this is the only thing that he didn't like.
Wow.
And I'm
Weird.
convinced that he ate them wrong.
Must have done. They sound fine.
Well, it's actually it's something that you don't just eat dry, and he ate it dry. So these things are made of potato, and it's essentially mashed potato that is formed into one of these little dumplings. And then you don't really boil them. You drop them in boiling water, but then you only let them sit in the water, and you take it off the stove. So it's the lumps of mashed potatoes, and they have a specific purpose. So it's wrong to eat them without sauce because they were made to soak up sauce. The problem with potatoes is that they can't really soak up sauce, and Germans love sauce. So they had to make a potato sponge, and that's what that is.
Yeah, I see.
Which means if you eat them dry, then they're just gloopy and sticky, and you have trouble swallowing them because that's not how that works. You need to dip them in sauce, and they suck themselves full of sauce, and then they're absolutely perfect.
I see. I see.
So there's a trick when you're eating this. Okay, but the red cabbage and the dumplings, they're not only a German thing, they also exist in other Central and Eastern European countries. You can also find that in the Czech Republic, for example. So that isn't just limited to one country. Then you have a French seafood platter that is quite popular for Christmas, to have a variety of seafood dishes. And as you can see, it's not just crustaceans and fish, it's also some shells, it's oysters, and so on. Then you have a Greek brisket. It's called kleftiko. And you can bet that the amount of garlic stuffed into it is as heavy as the meat.
Sounds good to me. Mm-hmm.
Yay. Sounds great. And when everyone eats it, it's okay.
Yeah.
We have Norwegian lamb ribs. They're called pinnekjøtt. And it's like cabbage with citrus and red radishes. So it's even quite interesting what they eat with it.
Yeah.
We have vareniki, and that is again an Eastern European thing. So this is the Polish version. And they look more like Chinese dumplings. So if you've ever seen Chinese dumplings, they're more like that. Or gyoza, for example, Japanese dumplings.
Yeah, I was thinking the same.
This is a type of filled dumpling. So there are savory forms, and the Polish eat a savory form of this during Christmas dinner. Theirs is filled with mushrooms and what else is in it? Cabbage, right? Or even sauerkraut, for example. So mushroom and cabbage, or mushroom and sauerkraut. But they also exist in sweet variants. So when you buy them, you can buy them ready-made from a freezer in the supermarket. There are some that have a neutral taste. They're filled with sour cream, so you can eat them with sweet food, but also with savory food. And then there are really sweet ones. There are some filled with cherries.
Oh.
Yeah, but the Polish prefer the savory ones for Christmas. We're leaving Europe now. We're going to Venezuela. I suspect that this is similar to tamales. It looks like, but it also kind of looks like a spring roll. So I'm not really sure what texture it has. But you see the banana leaf, so it's probably steamed, and it's called halaka. I would absolutely try that. I mean, it looks good, but I'm not sure about the texture. So yeah,
Yeah, it
kind
could be
of
a bit
like
squidgy.
pasta a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, kind of.
Okay. That is the only thing we have for South America right now. At least concerning the full meals, we'll get into some more later. As a full meal, I can show you something from Madagascar. So you remember the lychee that we had last time. Two types of chicken from Madagascar. So very specific Christmas dishes from Madagascar. And the first one you see is a ginger chicken. That is ginger and garlic. So this is a bit more like a barbecue chicken, I would say. And then the second one looks a bit more like Indian food, and that is actually a coconut chicken.
Ooh. Oh, you're making me hungry.
It will get worse.
Oh no. I'll deal with it, it's fine.
This is a weird one. So we're going to Asia now. This is gapama, and that is an Armenian dish from the Caucasus Mountains. Gapama is a stuffed pumpkin, a smaller pumpkin, like it's not super big, and the rice dish inside of it is kind of like an Indian biryani. So it has raisins, it has nuts, and that is really cool. So maybe it's a bit dry. It looks a bit dry to me, but with the right sauce, this could be awesome. So I said that we would look at Christmas pasta, and it's not just Italy. It's the Philippines too. This is Filipino Christmas pasta.
Looks alright.
This is not spaghetti, but it's chapaghetti.
Chapaghetti.
You can find that even in Korea now, because Koreans have it from the Philippines, so they didn't take the tour across Italy. They got it straight from the Philippines, and Filipinos are crazy for spaghetti. For example, McDonald's tried to sell spaghetti as a McDonald's meal once, and I think it was in the 70s or 80s. Nobody around the world liked it except for the Filipinos, and they are still selling it in the Philippines. If you ever want to eat McDonald's spaghetti, go there.
That is something I've heard about. The mixed spaghetti.
Okay. What they also do in the Philippines is they eat lechon or lechon. We'll look at that when we get into the meat, but that is also quite European, but has its own Filipino touch. Before that, we'll go into Indian Christmas curry, biryani, and sorpotel. And vindaloo. So you probably know all of these except for sorpotel. And sorpotel is a pork stew from Goa. Well, to be honest, you eat curry and biryani and vindaloo all year round, so those are not specific Christmas dishes. But I've found them on some British pages where people said, "Oh yeah, you can make a really cool curry with leftovers from Christmas."
It's true. Yeah, we love to do just leftover bits and turn it into bubble and squeak, especially.
Then let's go to Lebanon. So they have a lamb pie in Lebanon, for example.
Ooh.
This is the lamb kibbeh pie.
Sounds good.
And they have some side dishes with that. So these are the side dishes they eat. So the green stuff is called tabbouleh. And then they have things like hummus, for example, and fresh salad that goes with the lamb pie. And I told you that you would be surprised when you saw Japan. Let me show you Japanese Christmas food. This is the Japanese king, and well, not the king of Japan, of the country, but it's the KFC king. Because, so let me tell you the epic story. In 1974, KFC in Japan had a special Christmas offer. So people went to KFC around Christmas time, even people who don't know what Christmas is. And they got their buckets and went home, and they loved it. And this sparked a tradition in Japan that people get KFC every year around Christmas time.
Wow.
They're making all their money around Christmas time.
That's amazing.
um, so this is a very old tradition already, and it's a long-lasting tradition. They really stick to it, and it is so popular that you can't go to KFC on Christmas Day because people just pick up their buckets and they only make food to order. You can't go there as someone who hasn't pre-ordered.
I see.
They have these giant family buckets, you know. Yeah, and you have to order your Christmas food months in advance.
Months.
Months. In July.
Oh no. You have to pre-order your Christmas chicken.
Yes.
That's crazy.
And that is so weird. You know, why is it KFC? Why do you have to order in July? Why do you eat KFC chicken for Christmas?
I mean, it sounds alright, but yeah, maybe not for Christmas, right?
And I love that the king of KFC looks like Colonel Sanders. He has the beard and everything.
I was thinking the same thing.
So a lot of people in Japan don't even know what Christmas is about. So there is no connection to baby Jesus or even to Saint Nicholas or anything or to the winter solstice. And I knew some people who were studying in Japan while I was studying here. And they told me that they went to church in Japan. So there are churches in large cities. around Christmas time, and their friends went with them. They didn't quite understand why they were going because their friends were Japanese people who were not Christian. So in one of the churches was a giant Christmas tree, and the Japanese friends freaked out because they had only seen that on TV. So they were really excited and they asked, "What is going on here?" So my friends told them, "Well, we're celebrating Christmas and going to church as part of it. And you know the tree, you've seen the tree." So the Japanese people looked at them and asked, "What? You're celebrating Christmas too in Europe?" Um, so there is a slight misconception because in Japan, Christmas is marketed a little differently. Japanese people are told that Christmas is a celebration of love. And we also call it a celebration of love in the West, but it's more a family thing. It's like getting together after a difficult year and celebrating and eating and having presents and so on. But in Japan, it's almost like Valentine's Day. So that is more a celebration of romantic love, which is not something that we associate so much with Christmas. But to the Japanese, this is a festival of love. And they don't have this connection with baby Jesus, with the whole Christian stuff. So they were really surprised that Europeans celebrate that too, because they thought that it was an originally Japanese festival.
It's amazing. They celebrate it by pre-ordering KFC.
Lovely.
Oh wow.
So now I have to tell you how to say Christmas in Japanese if you ever get to Japan around this time. So you can at least say Christmas in Japanese.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll teach you. And it's really, really easy because the Japanese have many words that are English loan words. So when you want to say the word cake in Japanese, that is this.
Kiki.
Keiki.
Yeah. Just say cake funny, right? Kiki.
Yeah, like say it like a drunk person. Okay, so Christmas is also very easy because it's an English loan word. And I'll write it down for you. What you need to know is that the U in Christmas, or there is no U in Christmas in English, but there are some U's in Christmas in Japanese. They're not really pronounced like a U. They're almost silent, and I will say it for you. So it will only sound like weird Christmas. It will not sound what it looks like.
Okay.
That is
Korisamazu.
almost. It's Kurisamasu.
Korisamasu.
Right. Perfect. The U is really like an
It's
You
like
almost
if Western society was like, you know how to make fun of a Japanese person? Just yeah, but just put masu on the end instead, and make it sound kind of weird. Ah, Korisamasu. No.
yes. And I've seen it in combination with something else. So what do you think this could be? You don't need to pronounce it, but what do you think this means?
Well, my initial guess is like either Happy Christmas or Merry Christmas.
No. It's both are English words.
Fasaru Kurisimasu.
And remember that most languages on this planet don't have the English TH. They pronounce it like Z or D or S.
Father
Yeah.
Christmas.
Yeah, that is Santa. Fazoru
He's
kurisumasu.
Wasuru kurisimasu.
Yeah.
So
And I
good.
can give you Merry Christmas too.
Merry Christmas.
Right!
I
We're all
think I'll be
learning
learning some
Japanese tonight.
Japanese today. So great.
Yeah, it's really cool. So that is quite unusual, the Japanese tradition. So how they see this, how they mistake it for something that is Japanese, how they mistake it for St. Valentine's Day, that they eat KFC and so on. And it's fascinating. Of course, in anthropology, you don't make fun of people. And we're not making fun of people here. But it is very surprising that Japanese Christmas has basically no Christmas elements.
Yeah. It's just something to learn, and that's good. That's the whole point. We're here to learn.
Right. Okay, we'll continue with Greek soup for Christmas. This is called avgolemono, and this is a Greek Christmas soup. So you see, it has chicken and carrots. So that almost goes into the direction of stews. So I'll show you some more stews and soups. One stew is American oyster stew, and I don't know whether you've had that, but as far as I've seen, it's also eaten around Christmas time.
Makes me think of like a clam chowder.
Yeah, it looks like that, but with bigger bits.
Mm.
There are some more soups, and there is really not much difference between some soups and stews, but there is a variety of Christmas soups. So mushroom
Ooh.
soup, for example, is a part of the Polish celebration. So you can tell that everything is very, very rich here. A lot of meat, a lot of fish, and so on. So it all looks gorgeous. And in some cases, you can't even tell that it's supposed to be a stew. It really just looks like an ordinary dish. And that is something that is not so much connected to Christmas, but it's connected to the cold season, because when it's really cold outside, you want to warm yourself up with some soup or some stew. So that is why soups and stews are also part of the Christmas celebration. Now we'll get into the meat. One thing that you can also get in Germany, for example, is a crispy pork roast. And that is usually a pork with a crispy skin.
Like crackling.
And yeah, it's done with salt water. You have to apply salt water, and that makes the skin crispy. So inside it's very soft. It's not overbaked. But the skin is really like pork rinds. And you have Puerto Rican pork. This is also called pernil pork. So this is called lechon in Spanish. And you find this around the world, everywhere where people speak Spanish. So you can find this in Latin America, in Spain itself, and even the Philippines have it. Suckling pig means it's a piglet, and it's so young that it doesn't even eat solid food yet. It's one that still nurses. So it's a small piglet, and that is roasted in total. So you don't take it apart, you just gut it, and then you bake it like that.
Right.
You can probably tell me what this is.
Beef Wellington.
Yes. So that is how you can tell that you've made it, when they're naming a dish after you.
That's right.
A dish and a piece of clothing. So yes, this is almost like a South American dish that is also kind of a bread loaf filled with meat or with ham. And here you have the meat sitting inside a pastry. And that is one of the few beef dishes for Christmas. So usually people take pork, but beef is more expensive, and that also shows again that you can afford the snowman and the big pile of shit in front of your door. So this shows wealth. That is why it's beef. Okay, Scandinavia has something a little bit more disturbing, I would say. So you can call this head cheese or meat jelly, and that is part of Scandinavian Christmas celebrations.
Well, it's a food.
It's a food. And it's not too bad. I've eaten it. Then what can also appear on the table in the UK is pheasant. And this again is a very special type of bird. So this is not something that you would usually eat every day. That's something that you specifically make for Christmas, and in this case, even with edible flowers. Sweden has a good amount of sausages. So they have cold cuts, they have sausages, they have meatballs, as you can see in the same picture there. And it's just a complete orgy of meat and sausages and fish. And we're closing the meat with German dish. This is the back of a deer. It's
Nice.
deer fillet.
That sounds good.
Yes, that is really good. So what's missing is again the red cabbage and the knödel dumplings, because that would be the side dishes. But with venison like that, you also eat these poached pears with cranberries.
Ooh.
Yeah, that's really tasty. Okay, yeah. So I've eaten this too, and venison is a bit more lean than beef or pork, for example, because those animals move a lot, so they're not just sitting in a stable. They're very active, which means it's a higher quality muscle tissue. But it also means it can be a bit dry. You have to be careful with this. And fat carries taste. So I wouldn't say that this has no taste. I would rather say that it is closer to lamb in taste. So you know that sheep have a more intense taste than cattle, for example. So in this case, the taste is not lacking. But if it didn't have that strong venison taste, then I think it wouldn't have enough fat to really bring the taste across.
Right.
Yeah, and it's very, very nice. So that was the meat section. We'll carry on with fish. Swedish fish. This is called lutefisk. Looks pretty good, and this is mashed potatoes with, I think, peas. So it's a combination of potatoes and something green, and I think the green is the peas.
I would think so, yeah.
Yeah. And you can see roast potatoes in the background, and then you can see some bacon on the fish. That is also quite traditional. And then also something Scandinavian, which is a little bit more widespread, is pickled herring.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe you should eat that the next morning, because that is really good when you have a bad hangover. Right, so that is in the North Germanic area that we've seen. We have some really weird stuff, and a lot of it comes from Iceland and Greenland. So the least weird stuff is reindeer. We're eating Santa's reindeer.
It's not very surprising.
There is one that we can't show. Because it looks weird, and weird in a bad way. This is reindeer. This is a dish eaten in Greenland, but also in other North Germanic areas. So Greenland belongs to Denmark, and you can also get reindeer in Scandinavia, for example. then this is also not too bad. This is sangikyot, and those are cuts of meat. And the problem is not with the meat and the sides and so on. Like none of that is really bad, but it's a type of meat that you probably wouldn't get that often. So they can make that with lamb or mutton, but it can also be horse. And I think I can show you the whale blubber. Whale blubber is something that is eaten in Greenland, and it's called matak. That is whale blubber.
Doesn't look appetizing.
Well, it looks like fat. The white stuff is fat.
Yeah. Well, it's just
It,
the way it looks.
yeah, and it's just a single thing. Like I prefer some sauce.
Just something to make it
Um,
look a little more appetizing. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I would try that. But no, I'm a widow. Okay, so what I can't show you is stuffed seal. Um, and that is because it's a seal that is on its back and it's blackened because they're burning off the fur before they use it, and it's gutted, and they've stuffed the insides with different dishes. So there are pictures of stuffed seal out there, but I didn't download them because I thought, okay, that is something we can't show.
No.
Looks a bit disturbing.
Yeah, it sounds a bit disturbing.
Yeah. We're moving on to the sides, and we're starting with something very sweet. There is your cranberry sauce, and we're still with individual dishes, so that is something that you would typically find in the Anglosphere.
Mm.
And then
Good
we
stuff.
have your stuffing and your trimmings. Then there is bread sauce, and have you seen that in the United States, or is that a British thing? Just a
It's
British.
it's definitely a British thing.
Yeah. So doesn't exist in the whole Anglosphere. That's what I thought.
Yeah, it's a very unique thing.
Your mortal enemies.
Yeah, it's all right. Other people like him.
Uh, there are some videos. So you know Ferrero Rocher, right?
Yeah.
There are people playing pranks with Brussels sprouts wrapped in the wrappers of Rocher.
Oh, that's so
And
cruel.
also people playing pranks with meatballs wrapped in those wrappers. There are videos online.
Oh, that's awful. It's so mean. Not Ferrero Rocher.
Yeah. Then we have sweet potatoes, and that is us finishing the Anglosphere. Cabbage plays a big role. So the thing is that you can have white cabbage, you can have it on its own with a sauce maybe, but you can also have it in the form of cabbage rolls, which is really big in Eastern Europe and in Greece, for example. So the first one is the Polish version, and the second one is the Greek version. And the Greek version is called yiapratia. Then you can have it pure. That is the Norwegian way of making cabbage for Christmas. You've already seen the red cabbage. And some people actually eat kale for Christmas.
Ooh, that's kind of sad.
Yeah, that I was
I mean,
anticipating that reaction.
kale is fine, but like, don't try to put it in everything.
So that's what it usually looks like in the United States. And it's not even something that people regularly eat in Europe. So not every European eats this. There are some people who like it. But in Switzerland, for example, kale is only grown for cattle. So this is what they feed cattle with in winter. Makes
That
sense.
tracks. Yep.
But there are people who like it very, very much. There are kale queens and kings. And this takes place mostly in Germany and the Netherlands. So this is what German kale looks like.
Huh.
It looks edible. So what you do is you add some potatoes and you add some blocks of pork belly and some sausages, and you mix that with the kale. You usually fry the pork belly before you add the kale, and the potatoes are also cooked separately. And then you throw everything together, the belly, the sausages, the potatoes, and the kale. And then you let it stew for a while. So the sausage and meat juices can penetrate the whole thing, and the kale tastes like meat after that. Yeah, so that is something you could actually eat, although it's kale. Dishes with beet, because that is the next one that is also very common in winter. You can store beets for a while. So this is, for example, a beet salad, and I think it's a fish salad with beet, the pink one, the first one. They're really good as fries. So I've eaten potato fries and beet fries. They were baked together in the same oven at the same time. And beets turn really sweet when you bake them in the oven. So they lose this earthy aroma that is a little bit bitter. Typical winter food because you can store them well, and because they're for the cold season. So they have many vitamins, they're good for you, and they can also be tasty. But I understand that there are some people who don't like beetroot salad. We have a Finnish turnip side. It's similar to what some people do with potatoes, but this is made of turnips. And the Finnish have a salad that is very similar to Russian salads. It's called rosoli. This salad is called vinaigrette in Russian, but the Finnish also have it in called rosoli. Then the Swedes have a side dish. So this should be a side dish, but it actually contains some fish. So under all that vegetable stuff is sardines.
Huh.
Which probably makes it a bit salty. And then in Asia, you have jiaozi. And jiaozi are the original Asian dumplings. So they don't have anything to do with the potato dumplings in Central Europe. But this is the first dumpling, and it really traveled across Eurasia. So when we're talking about the Silk Road, you have these jiaozi. They went to Japan, and there they call them gyoza. So even the name is a little bit similar. And then they took the northern route through Russia and became pelmeni. And pelmeni are, well, they look a little bit more like tortellini. But they are related to these jiaozi. And vareniki, what we've seen with the Polish Christmas table, like the stuff that can also be filled with cherries or sour cream, for example, they look more like jiaozi, and they are also related to that northern branch. And then you go through the south, and when the jiaozi reach Italy with Marco Polo, they turn into ravioli and tortellini. So this is the ancestor of gyoza and ravioli and that kind of stuff.
Wow.
They can be filled with meat, but also with fish. And in Malaysia, they're eaten around Christmas time. So it's not a typical Christmas dish that has anything to do with Christmas. It's just a dish that they enjoy very much in Malaysia, and typical Chinese food. So jiaozi are very common. Then we have slightly weird specials, and one of them is called Lazy Dinner. That exists in the UK, and it also exists in Germany. So, do you have any idea what Lazy Dinner is?
I get the feeling it's one of the ones in a can.
No, it's actually something that you can prepare for Christmas evening. So the thought behind it is not that you don't want to put in any effort, but the thought behind it is that you want to give this as a Christmas present to your mom, that she doesn't have to stand in the kitchen for hours.
I
You're
see.
making something simple, and that is usually potato salad and sausages.
Hmm.
So you can make the potato salad in advance, and you can just buy the sausages, sometimes sausages in a can, for example, so you can store them for longer. But this is a really, really simple thing. I mean, it can be complicated when it's happening in Germany because there are about 600 different recipes for potato salad. Um, I could share a very simple one if people want to hear that. But well, this is really something that can be prepared in advance very easily. You don't need many plates for this, you don't need many pots for it. So it's really something that gives you the time to enjoy Christmas evening with your family, and your mom doesn't have to overwork herself. More Christmas pasta, this time the Italian one. This is Christmas pasta, and there are different types of Italian Christmas pasta. So, this is the same situation as with the KFC or the Korean royal cuisine or the jiaozi. The only difference here is that Italian is traditionally a juggernaut of Christmas meals. But in this case, they're just choosing a meal that is very common throughout the year that doesn't have that much of a connection with Christmas itself, and they're just making pasta for Christmas. So that can happen too. Um, Italy is super influential, and I'll show you an Argentinian dish that is based on Italian food. In Italy, you would call this vitello tonato. So this is veal with a tuna sauce. In Argentina, they call this vitel toné. So not exactly the same name as the Italian one, but it is the Italian one, and it also tastes very nice. So it's a very smooth tuna sauce, and it tastes a bit like the canned tuna in sunflower oil that you can buy.
Right.
Quite as strong, so it's more creamy and it's extremely smooth. And then you have capers in it, and some onions and garlic. So the only problem that I see is that the meat is veal, and people who don't want to eat baby cows might have a problem with that. So that is what I meant when I said this looks a bit like something that I have seen in South America. This is from Venezuela, and it's called pan de jamon, which means bread stuffed with bacon or with ham in this
Hmm.
case.
I can
Uh,
see a kind of resemblance. Sure.
yes, I mean, there is not that much meat inside, so it's not quite the same. But that kind of reminds me of the beef Wellington. And then, of course, we have a nice side, and that is the queso de bola. So this is something that shows up in the Philippines, Christmas cheese, and it's a giant cheese ball. That is also something that exists. And aside from that, we're closing with spices because what's very important for Christmas meals, specifically in Europe and North America, is that you finally get to eat some spices. People couldn't afford them throughout the year in earlier times. A lot of people were extremely poor. So you often hear these stories that allegedly Europeans were always very privileged, which is not true. Until the 1960s, a lot of people were struggling considerably in European countries, for example. And until the year 1900, about 96% of people were farmers or were at least living off of their own land. So we're not in a situation where we have a very long tradition of having spices readily available. A lot of people forget that because nowadays you can just go to the supermarket and buy something. But for a very long time, Christmas was the only time of year when you could get these exotic tastes. And nowadays, we don't even think they're exotic. Like, nobody would say that cinnamon is particularly exotic. Okay, so we're finished with the dinners. The next two videos will be very, very short, and I think our viewers will find them in the short section of your channel. So before we go there, what did you find most interesting about the dinners, and what did you find most appealing?
Well, I found it quite interesting the amount of beetroot that was used in quite a bit of it, because that's not something I find too much, at least in the UK and the US, which was quite interesting. Not that beetroot isn't used in other things; it's just definitely not for Christmas time. The lazy dinners, I found that to be interesting because yet again I should have known about it, but I never really heard of it. Yet again, I referenced that like dinner in a can kind of thing, and I'm sure I'll put up a picture of it because that's more what I was kind of expecting a lazy dinner to be. No, otherwise for the most part, I've heard of a variety of these, at least in some way, shape, or form. So it wasn't like completely mind blowing for me, but it was certainly still eye opening. Some of the inspirations of where a lot of it might have come from and how some of it even evolved over the years. I thought it was quite interesting. But I think the lamb pie for sure. Sounds
Oh, the
that's
Lebanese.
yes. That's certainly something I want to try.
Yeah, that is called kibbeh pie. So now you just need to find a Lebanese restaurant and see if they have kibbeh pie around Christmas.
sounds like a goal. I'll have to have a look.
Yeah, so I think we need to cut a lot of air from this video because I've
Oh
spent
yes.
considerable time searching for stuff.
Yeah, no, that's no problem. Is that everything for it then? Yeah.
That is everything.
Okay. Day 13. Definitely getting hungry now. Fantastic. Thank you so much to my YouTube members and Patreon members for all the love and support. It's thanks to people like you that we can keep growing.